Terrific. So our next speakers are Dr. Sharon Nachman, and she is the chair and PI of the IMPAACT network and has developed maternal and child HIV and TB clinical trial agendas over the past 9 years. She's had leadership roles in over 25 clinical trials, including 20 as the protocol chair or vice chair, and as the studies have enrolled, analyzed, and published results that have changed the way we evaluate and treat a host of infectious disease illnesses affecting children and women worldwide. In addition to her focus on HIV and TB, she's also developed studies helping to define the dose and PK for new antibiotics, evaluate new vaccines, and understand the long-term issues that develop in infants born to HIV-positive women worldwide. And she's also Professor Nachman is the chief of the Division of Pediatric Infectious Disease at Stony Brook Children's Hospital, and she's the vice dean for research at the Renaissance School for Medicine at Stony Brook and directs the Office of Clinical Trials at that institution. Dr. Nachman.
So thank you for inviting me. Next slide, please. So the overview, I'm going to give a brief review of our network status, our activities, our current portfolio of the studies. I've put the link to our network on the bottom. I encourage everyone to please take a look at it. The site is a completely transparent site because we're using federal dollars, so you can see all of the studies as well as the sites, the investigators that are part of our network. Next slide, please. Just a little bit of background, who are the funders and the sponsors of our network. We're funded through NIAID, DAIDS, NICHD, and NIMH. That helps drive what the agenda is for our network. We have a laboratory center, operations center, and leadership, and then we have a statistical core. We have NIAID-funded laboratories and NIAID and NICHD-supported clinical research sites. Next slide, please. This describes our science groups. We have a scientific leadership group, which includes certain individuals. We have scientific service cores, including social and behavioral, as well as the pharmacometrics, which you've heard a little bit about earlier today from Jeremiah Malpaire. We have our external scientific advisory group, as well as our community groups and our scientific committees. Next slide, please. Our scientific leadership and management oversights group have some overlap with the chair, the vice chairs, our operations and lab and statistical cores. But most importantly, our scientific leadership group has multiple at-large investigators as well as community representation. Our scientific service cores are the behavioral and social core, as well as our PK core, and that develops our pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamic models. They apply statistical models to optimize study design and perform our PK/PD analysis of our study data. Next slide. Our research agenda is to advance ARV treatment of pregnant postpartum women with HIV, evaluate the potential for ARV-free HIV remission, evaluate novel approaches to TB prevention, diagnosis, and treatment, as well as determine optimal and feasible methods for the prevention and management of co-infections and complication. And all of these agendas are across infants, children, pregnant, and postpartum women. Next slide. And just for your recognition, I've done this slide not only by scientific committees, but as well as the population served. And as you can see, pregnant and postpartum women cover 3 of our specific scientific agendas, with the ARV remission starting in the postpartum period. Next slide. Our current portfolio, we have 7 protocols that are in development, 2 that are pending, 9 that are open and enrolling, 2 in follow-up, and 4 that have closed recently for follow-up. There are approximately 30 additional studies and ancillary studies that are in analysis as well as in a manuscript writing phase. Next slide. Now, this is our current portfolio, and I've highlighted in yellow those studies that are specific to pregnant and postpartum women. And as you can see here, we're looking at multiple drugs, including ARV-TVs, and particularly our long-acting ARVs now during pregnancy and across the age groups. This is very important because we've had to develop specific models for these age groups. Next slide. This is just to give you a sense of how long these studies are. And I've put it out from April of 22 through April of 2027. So you get a sense of how long the studies are, how long patients are enrolled, and then in follow-up. And as you can see by the colors, these include all of the studies as part of our scientific agenda. Next slide. Our network recompetition occurred in 2019 to 2020, and our funding cycle is 7 years. So while this is year 2 of it, we expect to be around for another 5. We have a strong track record of publications with 35 manuscripts this past year. 65 manuscripts and 66 abstracts have been reviewed. And we've had 2 studies that had regulatory submissions in 21, and then 5 additional studies that are having regulatory submissions in 22. These are licensure studies and will change the package insert for these drugs for our populations. And that's really important because we are one of the few network groups that actually do regulatory submissions. Next slide. This is a picture of our sites. And as you can see, we cross the entire world, North America, South America, Africa, Asia. We have sites pretty much all over. Next slide. This is just to give you a snapshot of what our dashboard looks like. So we are able to track by accrual, by the sites, accrual across all the sites, by study, etc., by patients when they enrolled. And this dashboard is critical because at any time we can then see if there's a problem enrolling, under or over enrollment, or some issue at a site or by a study. Next slide. Same thing on this slide, and I'll skip this one. Next slide. Our community is engaged across all of our studies. They are represented across the entire network at our clinical research sites, at leadership, scientific and other committees, as well as community representatives on every protocol team. Next slide. We work across all the networks, so we are very excited to be part of this discussion today, as well as looking to work with IMPRINT in the future. We've worked with the HPTN doing pregnancy studies, ACTG doing TB studies, the HVTN doing TB vaccine studies, Penta getting dolutegravir licensed, as well as the RSV and VRC studies. Next slide. We work with multiple pharma groups. I saw the question beforehand about is IMPRINT working with pharma. We have a very strong track record working across all pharma groups. Next slide. That's all I had, and I'm hoping for any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Nachman. Any?
Has anyone done in your work? I know you've done some work with remdesivir. Has anyone looked at Paxlovid?
So the Paxlovid study is not part of the network. There are several Paxlovid studies that are happening outside the network. Interestingly, they are happening at IMPAACT sites, because one of the things that we advocate for is that if the study cannot be done through the network, it should be done through the network sites, because all of our sites know how to do licensure studies.
So it's in progress, you said?
I think those studies are in progress. We are a site for Paxlovid.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Looking forward to that.
But question for Rupsa, it's not in pregnancy, correct?
So the Paxlovid one is not in pregnancy, but that's under discussion.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I wasn't clear. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
So our next speaker